Hey everybody, how are you guys doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and today we get to talk a little bit more about Metroid Prime 4, as there's been a little bit of an update from an interview with the producer of the game, Kensuke Tanabe. So yes, it is Metroid Prime 4 update time, and as you guys know, I'm going to cover every tiny little itty-bitty thing or piece of news or interview that comes out about Metroid Prime 4 until we finally see this game and also hopefully finally play this game. That, I feel, is what my job is and my responsibility to you guys, and also, honestly, just someone as a fan, I can't help but see these things and get excited about these things, and I always have so many thoughts and so many discussions within me about this stuff that I've got to talk to you about it. That's why you guys come to my channel for the most part, right? Is for all this good Metroid stuff. So, in no surprise, this comes from an interview that he conducted with the one and only Video Games Chronicle, VGC. These guys are monsters. They are unstoppable, especially when it comes to the Metroid Prime stuff. So I've got to continue to give them a shout out. I know I bring it up a lot nowadays when I report on stuff that they break, but they really have been on top of it when it comes to Metroid Prime 4 updates and development, and I just think it's great. And they were actually conducting an interview with Kensuke Tanabe, and he briefly, in the most passing way, references the Metroid Prime series, which, to be fair, a lot of people are spinning it towards Metroid Prime 4 specifically and their entire approach to the game, and maybe they're going to be doing something bad to the game. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about and maybe try to set the record straight a little bit. So Tanabe was being interviewed by VGC to discuss Paper Mario, which a lot of you guys may know, he's the producer on the Donkey Kong Country series, on the Metroid Prime series, including Prime 4, and also Paper Mario the Origami King, which actually releases today, the recording of this video. And in being interviewed about this game, some of his philosophies towards the approach to Paper Mario, and the fact that there has been some fan backlash to recent entries in the game, and how they applied that to the Origami King, were what they were discussing. And so, in that, he was talking about the idea of approaching the game from a casual player design point, like considering casual players as opposed to like hardcore or serious gamers and players out there. And he also kind of relates it a little bit to Metroid Prime, which is where this big story about Metroid Prime 4 being casual is coming from. Here is what he says about the approach to Metroid Prime and to all of the games that Nintendo makes. Nintendo's philosophy on game creation is that we don't ignore casual players in creating our game. This is also true for games such as those in the Metroid Prime series. Games that at first glance look like they are only aimed at core players. So literally, that's it. That's what this whole story and headline has been the past 2 days, is this interview and this quote with Tanabe where he says, Nintendo makes games while considering casual players, and that's also true for the Metroid Prime series. He doesn't even mention Metroid Prime 4, which is a huge part of this, you guys. He doesn't even say Metroid Prime 4. He says the Metroid Prime series, and how the Metroid Prime series, maybe at first glance, on surface level, looking at it visually, one might think that's a core game for core serious players. But in fact, Nintendo still takes that same design philosophy of considering casual players into the design of even a game like that. And so, you're probably seeing some articles and maybe even some YouTube videos. I haven't seen anyone on YouTube cover this yet, but you might be seeing some stuff out there in conversation about Metroid Prime 4 is going to be casual. Retro confirms, Nintendo confirms, Tanabe confirms it's going to be a casual game. And so everyone has this crazy fear about what they're going to be doing with this game. And it's definitely, in my opinion, being blown way out of proportion. Now, we're all Nintendo fans, right? So we're familiar with Nintendo, their games, their gameplay, their approach to designing the titles that they make. And I think that we all understand that Nintendo, while they are some of, if not maybe the very best developers in the industry, especially in terms of gameplay, at the end of the day, I think we also still understand that, yeah, they do make games that have a casual appeal to them. They make games that are playable and accessible and fun for everyone. All different ages, all different walks of life, all different experiences with gaming, right? I mean, whether you're talking about Mario or Pokemon or The Legend of Zelda or Mario Kart, with a few exceptions, I would say Fire Emblem and Smash Brothers are the kinds of games that really the more serious you are about gaming and the more experience you have, the easier you can play those games. But with those few very, very tiny exceptions, for the most part, what Nintendo does is make games that are appealing and accessible to everybody. In fact, it's one of the things that most of us who are Nintendo fans have said has been one of their strongest suits and their strongest characteristics throughout the whole several 3-4 decades that they've been making video games. And I think that that's still true today, even in the Switch era. And then you look at the Metroid Prime thing and the fact that some people might have this worry about how casual of an experience Metroid Prime 4 might turn out to be. And here's the thing, let's be real, let's be honest with ourselves with what he's saying about the Metroid Prime games. Honestly, and again, I'm a Metroid guy, I'm a Metroid Prime guy. I like to consider myself sort of, I guess, an expert, you know, if I want to use the word expert here. Definitely very well versed in Metroid, and I will be real with you guys. I see what he's saying. There is a casual, accessible approach to how the Metroid Prime games have been designed. Now, would I go so far as to say that the Metroid games, or the Metroid Prime games specifically, are casual exactly? No, I wouldn't say that they're casual, and honestly, Tanabe is not saying that those games, or Prime 4, are going to be casual either. But what he's saying is, there is a philosophy that, quote, doesn't ignore casual players. And I understand that. I think that if you look at the Metroid Prime games, they have some hardcore fundamentals in terms of the scanning and the lore and how much there is to read and learn and the story. And then, you know, the backtracking, the engagement with the world, some of the puzzle solving. Yeah, there are some slightly more difficult or more advanced concepts going on with all three of the Prime games. But also, at the end of the day, they're pretty straightforward, they're pretty simple, and it is like, I mean, how many different controls are there to the game? There's not much. You have your lock on, you have your shoot button, you have your jump button, you have your morph ball button. Like, that's it. It's not this crazy complex thing, and the enemies are also not extremely difficult, with the exception of some bosses. Now, I will also agree that some of the bosses and their difficulty and how you have to defeat them and switch between beams and stuff, that's where you get into a little bit more of the serious core gamer kind of appeal, where really the more experience you have with gaming, the easier those fights are going to be. But with those exceptions, a lot of the aspects in the gameplay and the approach to those games have a casual sort of, I don't know, approach to it. I can see what he's saying. Again, I don't think the games are casual, but I can see how the games don't ignore the fact that some casual players might want to pick up and play a Metroid Prime game. And now, how does this relate to Metroid Prime 4? Well, we obviously don't truly know because we haven't seen the game or heard anything from Nintendo on the game, really, except for this quote, which isn't even about that game, it's just about the Metroid Prime series as a whole. But I have to tell you, I really feel like this is only telling us that they're probably going to take the same approach and the same philosophy into Metroid Prime 4, you guys. I guess we all have to just prepare for the fact that Nintendo is going to do what it seems like they've always done with the first three Prime games, and make it the best Metroid and Metroid Prime game it needs to be for whatever their vision for the game is, but also still remind themselves that some casual or not very experienced gamers might pick it up, or they might want some of those gamers to feel like the barrier of entry is so low that they would feel comfortable picking up Metroid Prime 4 on the Nintendo Switch and actually giving it a shot. That's the thing. They're trying to make it so that people might be willing to give it a shot and won't be immediately turned off with how crazy difficult and complex the game and the gameplay and the story might actually be. It makes a ton of sense. It feels like a very Nintendo approach. And again, as I already spent several minutes talking to you guys about, I see what he's saying even with the first three Prime games. There are plenty of difficult and complicated and hardcore gamer elements to those games, of course, but there's also a lot of casual appeal, and I get it. He talks about how at first glance they seem like they're aimed at core players, and I know what he's saying there. I think he's talking about visually, the art direction, the fact that you're a bounty hunter, the fact that it's a first-person game and you're shooting things and you're blowing up alien creatures and you're seeing their, you know, multicolored blood all over the place. And it's just got that kind of thing that probably jumps out to a lot of people, you know, again, just visually at first glance, like he says, like something like a Halo or a Borderlands or a Call of Duty, something like that. Games that a lot of people might associate with being more difficult and more targeted towards the core advanced gamer. And yes, I agree with that too. The surface level visual at a glance look of a Metroid Prime game very much is that. But I mean, I don't know how many times I can say it in this video. I might have to probably stop saying it. I totally understand the casual approach. That's what Nintendo does. I don't think that this is going to be a huge black mark on Metroid Prime 4. I don't think that this is going to hold Metroid Prime 4 back. I think that the best version of what this game can be is going to be able to be still accessible to the casual player, but still interesting and appropriate for the core player. Like, I just don't think that Nintendo is making a Metroid Prime 4 that's going to forget me, or forget a lot of you guys, and forget that us, the hardcore gamers, if we want to say, and the serious Metroid fans, are going to be out here playing this game. They're not going to forget that we exist. I just don't see that happening. So, you know, and in a lot of ways, I'll wrap this up here. In a lot of ways, I also kind of like hearing this, not because I want, you know, casual games and casual elements in my Metroid Prime 4 or in any of my Nintendo games, more so that it just tells me that they're going to keep doing what they've already been doing, you know? I mean, this philosophy that he's describing is what created Metroid Prime, my all-time favorite game, and its two amazing sequels, Prime 2 and Prime 3. And, you know, we all love those games, right? We all love Metroid, we love Metroid Prime, we love the trilogy, we want the trilogy on the Switch. That tells me that whatever philosophies and approaches and design ideas they took into making those games, I want them to continue with Prime 4. And he's basically only saying that, like, I get it. I will also say that I still think that they're going to add plenty of new core gaming mechanics into this game. I've said several times some of my theories and ideas for how they're going to evolve or change this game while still making it feel like a true traditional Metroid Prime game. And so I think it's going to almost veer more towards the hardcore kind of gamer market. But we know that Nintendo still likes to make sure that anyone could have a chance to pick up one of their games and play it and enjoy it, even their version of a first-person shooter, which is the Metroid Prime series. So I find this interesting. I find people's reactions very fascinating. But at the end of the day, I'll be honest, I really just have no worries about Metroid Prime 4. So that's what's going on. That's the interview. That's the quote that's doing the rounds. And people, I think, in a lot of ways, taking it out of context to spin it into something more negative than it is. But you've heard my thoughts and my breakdown. I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as people want to make it out to be. They're just going to have the same approach they did to the first 3 games, and we all love those games. We know Nintendo designs with a casual mindset. It's not going to ruin Metroid Prime 4. I just don't think it's going to ruin Metroid Prime 4. So if I were you guys, I would not worry about this. I would not sweat this. I would not be losing sleep over this. I personally still believe Metroid Prime 4 is going to blow us away. So these are my thoughts and opinions. This is what's going on. I want to hear your thoughts and opinions and how you interpret this interview and what he said. Tell me all that stuff below. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of 2 Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.